Okay, guys, so last week I did a couple of videos showing how to improve on the Bricks Builder Nestable Accordion and Nestable Tabs. That was more to do with how they display and accessibility from the point of using correct labels and also using keyboard interactions to tab and open and close, etc. I since was pointed to some documents which show that the keyboard behavior in particular is a little bit different to what I thought it was. So this is going to supersede those two videos, and I'm going to show you where I got to based on making them work, how these documents here at the ARIA Authoring Practices Guide work. Now, on that page here under their patterns, so just up here, their patterns, and they've got some patterns on how these different components should work. So the first one is the accordion, and there's a bit of a description here. I'm not going to go through every word. It talks about the keyboard interaction, how it should work, and what kind of roles and attributes that elements should have. There are some optional things in here as well, but what I'm going to do is go straight to their example. And in their example here, they have keyboard support. So we got space or enter to open or close a accordion when the header has focus. We've got tab, which tabs to the next focusable element. So that would be either the next accordion header or content that's inside the panel that's open that has focusable stuff like links or whatever. And shift tab just goes backwards. And that's the only provision for keyboard accessibility in this example. There is a structure here where it talks about the semantic elements. We've also got some ARIA attributes here. We've got ARIA controls to say which panel does that button control, and from the actual panel, which button or which element is labeling me. Okay. And then they have a source code here, which is for their example, and it's very simple. We've got a wrapper, which is basically up here, just a wrapper class. We've got a heading 3, and inside that heading 3, we've got a button and just a span with some text. I've actually added a icon to this as well. And on our button, there's a ARIA label to indicate whether it's expanded or not. There's an ARIA controls, which tells it which panel. So there's a panel down here. So this controls sect 1, and we've got a panel down here with a role of region and an ID of sect 1. Then the section or the role has an ARIA label by with the ID of what is going to be my label. And because we're using a header with a description in it, that's just pointing back to this button. So whatever's inside that button is going to be the ARIA label for that section. And the rest of this is just content inside that. So this is a very, very simple example. So what I've done is made sure that this matches that example. And if we look at I'm just going to edit that in Bricks. But this is a simple layout. There is my accordion. So what I've done is I've grabbed a standard Bricks accordion nestable, chucked it on the DOM. I'll put a wrapper around it so we can add some CSS and control to that. Given all these elements names so that I can create BEM elements to easily target those. And then I've got some CSS up here, which is my CSS that controls the whole thing. And I'll come back to that very shortly. But this here is our standard accordion. So the only thing I would say in here is because of the way we're controlling this, I removed all of the styling from the tile and content here, and we're not going to do that. And actually on this one, I enable the expand first and independent just for testing. So you can see how that works. Now, there's a standard transition of 200 milliseconds. And this was the first problem I came across with Bricks, which I talked about in my last video, where I'll show you in the front end where this happens. So, in fact, what I might do is change that to 1000 so I can show you the issue. Okay. I'm going to look at this second one because it's not open. If I look at my item, where's my item? There's my item there. It's not open, but if I click on it, you see I've got my WP open, then after 1000 milliseconds, I get my bricks open. Close it, takes the whole animation period before it adds or removes this bricks open. So if you're trying to style the header or the icon to change when you click it, it waits till the end of the transition to either open and close, which is not what we want. We want to actually change that header as soon as we click on it. We don't want to wait till the end of the animation change because it just looks really weird and clunky. So we've had to do some work on this to make that work. And I'll put it back to 200 because that's, oops, not 909. Helps if I turn my numlock key on. So what we have here is our typical, there it is, open, closed, open, closed. That actually just messed up because I think this is the next problem I come across. I might have to extend the amount of time. So when in the builder here, when you tell it to open the first item, unfortunately, Bricks does not add the BRX open straight away. It adds it after the animation period. And because I've set that to 200 there, I'm just going to take that out so it's on default. We have to wait, even when it's just initially open, we have to wait for that period to determine whether it's open or closed before we add our class to manage it up here. So it's a little bit of a flaw, I think. I think it should be looked at by the Bricks team as to when that's added. It just doesn't make sense the way it is at the moment. Anyway, so what we've ended up with is a accordion. If we look at the heading here, we've got our wrapper, we've got our H3, which I've given some BEM class names to. It's my WP Easy accordion heading. And that would be in here. That is our H3 there. Let's go back there. Then we've got our button, which is inside that H3, which according to this is correct. And that button has a ARIA controls, which tells it that that controls this panel. Where's that panel? That panel there, sorry. So we've got an ID on that panel of WPE with this random string, got the button saying that that controls that. Right, we also have the ARIA labeled by on the panel, and that panel there, that labeled by points back to the button. So that UUEBK points back to this UUEBK there. So we've satisfied the rules over here. Where is it? We've satisfied the ARIA controls, controlling the region, and we've satisfied the label by pointing back to the button in this case. So that's all correct. So I'm happy that that's okay. Now, with my bricks, I have the default setting to only add IDs as needed. So if you just add more and more of these items, here, and you don't add any IDs to them or don't change any of the settings on them, it won't get an ID output, which is exactly what I want. But what that means is that we don't have anything for the ARIA to reference. So what we have to do is in our code here, we go through all of our, we've got to generate random string here. We go through all of our panels, all of our buttons, and if it doesn't have an ID, then we generate a random one that we can use for our ARIA. That's what that's all about there. All right, so I just want to look here. So keyboard navigation. So ARIA is all satisfied. Keyboard navigation, tab to the heading. I can press space to close, space to open, or enter to close, enter to open, tab to the next one, enter, space, and that's pretty much all the requirement is for the accordion. So this is a nice simple one. All right, so I'm not going to go through all of the JavaScript here. I will just mention that on here, because of the way Bricks is adding, when this is open by default, the way Bricks is adding that Bricks open after a period of time, we need to determine whether it's open or not. The only way we can do that is by waiting. So we've got a Bricks transition time I've put up here. So if you've got your transition time set to 200 milliseconds, set this to 200, 250 or 300. So what that's going to do is that we're going to run a script down here, which uses that, and we set our active element after that bricks transition time. So that is, if this is open by default, we're going to wait for that transition. We're then going to check and see whether it should be open, and then we're going to add our classes to it. So that is the reason we have to do that. So that's the only tricky bit. If you change the amount of animation time on there, or the transition time in the code, you need to update this transition time so we know to run after it's actually added. If you have this too low, what happens is, I'll show you, I'll change this to 150. What will happen is when we refresh this, it actually worked that time for some reason. Maybe it hasn't saved the, change it to 50. Save. Maybe I didn't refresh properly. I'm just going to do a refresh. There we go. So it's open, but we haven't added our open classes to style this because the class didn't know it was open, because it didn't have the bricks open class on there when we ran our script. That's the reason we have to do that. So you got to be careful of that. And that's the only thing that you need to worry about in this particular instance. Now, that's it. That's the accordion. I'll chuck a little reference to the this document here from the ARIA authoring practice guide, and I'll also chuck a reference to the link. Now, moving on. So that is the here we go. That is the accordion done. Let's have a look at the tabs. So there's the tabs. If we have a look at our tabs in the same document, there's our tabs there. It's a little bit trickier. There's a lot more that it needs to do. So it talks a little bit about it here. Again, it talks about the keyboard accessibility, and it talks about the roles. We then go into an example. Okay, here's an example here. Some of the interesting stuff that they've done here is they specify that the color of this tab should be the same as the panel background. When it's selected, it should raise above the others by 4 pixels, and it should have an indicator on the top of it as well, is what they're saying in their specification. You may or may not agree. You can change this to suit. I've made mine work the way this is described. Okay, now you can read all that if you like, but there's a little more to this. So we've got that tab key. Focus moves to the tab list, place focus on the active tab element. Okay, and I'll explain that shortly. When it contains the focus moves to the next element in the tab sequence. Okay, that I missed. I need to come back and do that. So what that's saying is, if I press the tab, the first element is open. If this one's selected and I'll click away and I'll press the tab, it goes straight to whichever one is selected. Okay. Now, it did say in there, which I missed in the first one, that pressing the tab should go to the next available tab, but I actually read that as it should go to the next content. So I've got it tabbing to that content there. So if I'm on this tab here and I press tab, it goes to the content. On that one, I press tab, it goes to the content. I need to reread that and have a bit of a think about that. Okay, so the right arrow moves focus to the next tab. If it's the last tab, then it moves to the first tab. Okay, so let's have a look at that. So I'm on the first tab, press my arrow to the right, goes to the next one, arrow to the right, next one, arrow to the right, goes to the first one. So it loops around. The left arrow does the opposite. So if I press the left arrow on there, it goes to the end, left, left, left. So it's looping in the opposite direction. So that's working. Our home key, if I press the home key, it should go to the first tab. If I press the end key, it should go to the last tab. And that's working as well. And that's it. That's the keyboard interactions. List of roles, same sort of similar sort of thing as the accordion, except for this was using ARIA selected instead of a expanded, ARIA expanded. And the rest of this is pretty much the same, but we've got some tab index stuff we've got to do as well so that it is not tabbable. That really is mostly to do with if, say, for example, I'm on that second tab there, if I click away, if I tab to it, it goes to this one, not to that one. Okay, so it's the that's pretty much what it's saying. So it should tab to the one that's active, not to the others. All right. And then we've got a layout here, a source code layout. Again, we have a wrapper, and then we've got a heading. This is important because we're using that for the labeled by for the tab list. Okay, so we've then got an ID on that of tab list 1. We've got a roll of tab lists, so that's our tabs. So that's a wrapper for our tabs. So have a look in here. Now DOM. The main heading. So we've made it this one here. So this main heading, which has got an ID. Again, it's a random ID because I didn't put an ID on it. Bricks will only add an ID if you change some of the properties. With the setting I have it on, which is to only add IDs as needed. So we're adding our own IDs if they don't exist. We then have underneath that, we've got our tabs nestable, which is the bricks tabs nestable component. And we have our tab list. So this tab list here is that tab list there. Okay, and inside that tab list, we've basically got buttons, and the buttons have a roll of tab, and they've got ARIA selected, and the same as the other one with the controls. So let's have a look here. If I go to this button, what do we got? We've got a ARIA roll of tab, ARIA controls, and ARIA selected false. If I click on the first one, now ARIA selected is true. These don't change here, still a roller tab and a controls there. That one there, and basically buttons are different, tabs are different from accordions in the set that you have a list of tabs and a list of panels, whereas the accordion is a parent-child relationship where you have an accordion header and then you have the panel underneath that. So that has to work a little bit differently. So each of these is the same sort of thing where we have an ID on them, and ARIA controls to say which panel it controls, ARIA selected. You can see here, these ones are not tabbable because they're not selected. Okay, so that's part of what I initially read. So that's why we've got the tab index of -1 on those. Okay, here's our content. And if we look at the example here, come back down here. Where are we? Where are we? Where are we? Button, button, button. Here we go. Got a tab panel. I've actually wrapped these into another wrapper so they make more sense. I've actually got that inside a content wrapper, and then I've got my panels here. You don't have to, but I just thought it was easier to manage. So in there, we've got our first tab panel, and it has got bricks open on it. So is that first button there. The ID of this is the RTSML, and this one up here, the ARIA controls, is the RTSML. It's got labeled by the HMQLL, and the button ID is a HMQLL. So there's that circular reference there. So I think this is as it should be. The keyboard accessibility works, the ARIA labels, the ARIA attributes, the roles seem to match what's in here. So I'm happy with that. Right, now a couple of the things I've done in here is, and I did this in the previous one, I've got this a vertical tabs option where all we're doing is adding this here. Look at the DOM again. Go back to our tabs. There, there. There we go. So I'm just adding this modifier class here, and that's changing the behavior of the tabs. So that makes it vertical. And all the CSS is in the template, which I'll export for this. So there they are there. So the tab's working as it should. These pop to the left by 4 pixels. These ones pop up by 4 pixels. You do get a little bit of shift in these because of the animation, so you can just see it shift a little bit, but I'm okay with that. It's only a 4 pixel shift. It kind of adds to the effect. And then we've got another utility class or a modifier class, this here. And if you add that, I'll show you here. So I've added that there. And what that's done is it set the flex grow on all of these items to be 1 so that they fill in the space. So they fill in the entire width of the tab. Now I can also show you here, if I grab that utility class, where is it? I got that utility class here, and I went to my vertical tabs and added that class in there, they will also expand to fill whatever space is there. I don't like that because they're moving around too much as the content changes, but you can do that if you want that sort of effect. So that's it. That's the tabs and the accordions. I will export these as separate templates. I'll put a reference to the ARIA documents that these are based on. Love to get your feedback. You agree, disagree, right path, wrong path. The only way I'm going to improve this is through people telling me what they like, what they don't like. So yeah, thanks for listening, and I hope you get some value out of this.